So Brittany Isherwood from Burke Aerospace, it is our delight to have you here today on the Manufacturing Shakeup. You're president of an organization in your 30s, which is amazing. And so we just want to start out today and ask you, like, how the heck did you get to be in that position at your age? Like, what was your career trajectory that got you there?
Yeah, I think I still kind of like pinch myself today thinking like, how am I in this position? I went to school first, like right out of high school, went in for mechanical engineering, had no idea what mechanical engineering was. It was an AP calculus teacher of mine was like, you need to go to school for engineering. And I was like, okay, what's the most general one? I pick mechanical. You can do anything with mechanical engineering. And then from there, I worked really hard and I went straight into GE Aviation, which was close to the school that I went to in Boston. And they recruited me 6 months before I graduated, which was really exciting to know, okay, I'm going to end school and go straight into the workforce, which is really what I needed to do because let's be real, how do you pay your bills without making money? So that's really when
magic.
Foot right into
magic.
Yeah. Right. Yep. So when step 1 foot right into manufacturing, I think my first day was like walking into a jail, to be honest with you. Everyone's looking around like, who's this 20-year-old little blonde girl walking around, doesn't have a clue. I got the cat calls, the whistles, which were interesting, to say the least, but quickly, made a name for myself and got the respect of the workforce. And then, on my trajectory at GE, I was there for about 9 years, quickly promoted every 18 to 24 months into different type of roles went from engineering type of roles into production type of roles. So more on the inventory management side of the business to running businesses. And then I came across Burke Aerospace. They were a supplier of mine at the time when I worked at GE, which was really exciting, working with a smaller business and seeing how they responded to my needs as a large company, as the OEM. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I was like, I don't care that it's Christmas Eve and tomorrow's Christmas. I need the parts today. It's the end of the year and you need to show up. And it was the owner of the company who showed up with the parts in hand. And I was like, I really want to work for a guy like that, who's going to put everything aside to make sure that my needs were met. So we, formed a relationship over the years and came into Burke Aerospace about 9 years ago, first in business development, where I was growing their business in the aerospace sector, because that was my background. And through, 3 or 4 years of success of growing the business, about 20 to 30% year over year, COVID happened. I had a maybe 6-month-old baby, and the owner's like, hey, you want to run the company? And he's like, you have a stronger background in operations than I do. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. I was living in Massachusetts, running a company in Connecticut with 2 little kids. And I was like, I'm up for the challenge. So fast forward to 2024, I've been in the president role since 2019, and we have had record years year over year, continuing to grow our business. And, it's been through a lot of hard work, tears, sweat, some fun along the way, but I'm happy to say that, I think we've got ourselves in a great position, and so far success. So
wow, that's some ramp. I love everything you just said. One thing that you said early on in your story, I want to dial back to the early part of your career when you walked in and it was, who's this cute little blonde girl who doesn't know what she's doing. But then you said, but I moved through that quickly and I made a name for myself and I got the respect of the people. Can you, like, what did that look like? And not the negative part of like, right, how annoying it is to get catcalled, but like, what were
whatever. It's life.
What did you do? Like, what did you do? Like, how did you approach, what does make a name for myself look like in terms of what behavior or mentality you demonstrated?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is listening, right? So you have an environment that was a difficult one because it was a union environment on top of it. So you have an old school manufacturing facility that has a very strong union. And prior to my existence, the management style there was us against them. And I found that that's not going to work. I'm a people person, right? I like to talk to people, understand them, what makes them tick. And so I spent a lot of my time, I would say in the first 6 months really is connecting with them, listening to them, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years and, ergo mat would be helpful. It's the little things that you listen to, right? And you follow through with, then they're like, oh, she's actually here to help us. And she's just not another manager that's going to float in and out of here in 12 months and it'll be on to the next thing. And so I made sure in my role that I did a few rotational jobs in the same business unit so that I could continue to really grow strong relationships with the workforce. And, I would hold people accountable, right? If you say you're going to do something, one, I would follow through saying that I would, complete what I was asked to do. And then also for them. And that really helped me. And so I felt like a lot of, within 6 months, they're like, oh, she's like our daughter. We want to see her succeed. So they were more out to help me because they knew that it was a two-way relationship versus just taking and productivity, which is some management style.
Yeah, we've all had that adventure, I think, of what have you done for me lately?
Right.
Yeah. No thanks.
Right. Yeah.
Quick question. So were you part of, I know GE has a lot of rotational programs where they're changing your position intentionally every such number of months so that you're experiencing different parts of the business. Is that what you were in when you first started?
No, so I actually was recruited to do an OMLP program, which is kind of the rotational program where you're forced to change roles. But at the time, I actually lost my father my senior year of college. And so it was important for me to stay in one actual location, so close to, Boston, Mass. And so it was actually just the quick changes in jobs were just because if you're highly rated in you're hitting your metrics, they want to quickly promote you. And one thing with that is, you also have to, vouch for what's good for you. There were times where jobs were presented to me and I was like, oh, this is, the next box I need to check. But then talking to other mentors and people who are in my life, they're like, well, that might be the next check that you need to check off on your list, but are you really getting the most of your current role and not always thinking about what's next, but just really focusing on do a really good job at what you're doing now. And if you think you need 6 more months in that role to really hit a home run, then say, hey, I think this is a great opportunity for me, but I really would like to get these 5 projects done before I make that next step. So I think it helped me in my career to kind of slow it down sometimes, to get full absorption of the job, I guess, really, before you move on to the next hurdle that you set up for success, I guess.
Yeah, because it is an ebb and flow, right? Sometimes we do need to be moving from sort of on the turnstile of, sort of getting a broader or a wider perspective. And then other times we have to go deep and narrow. And so it sounds like part of what you've navigated successfully is doing both of those things and understanding with the help of mentors, what might be the right timing for me to do which of those things.
Right.
And I'm going to nab that as a shakeup factor for our listeners. So, for anybody out there who is wondering, how do I know what to do when? Let's make a note that Brittany has said, we can look at going deep or we can look at going wide. That strikes me as a very actionable tip for all our friends out there.
Right. Because a lot of times I would say the managers or the hiring manager is they're looking to fill that role, right? And so you have to slow down sometimes to think what's best for both, right? Not just the manager who wants to fill the role, but what's really best for the employee too. And even when I interview people now today, I'm like, hey, it's just as important that you like us as much as we want to hire you, because it's got to be an equal 50-50 for it to be successful.
I think that's critical because honestly, we've in our work at Boulder Company, when we've been working on helping people with their development programs for sort of the climbing the corporate ladder or leadership development, moving people up the pipeline, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's usually a place where we have to tap the brakes with them because for the exact reason you cited, where they say, well, I just need to fill this. No, you want to fill it successfully.
Right.
We want to set people up for success, not for failure, because the consequence of doing the opposite is a hot mess, and
Right.
I feel rotten. And the reason I'm digging into this is because I think this is, I heard you say, check the box, that sometimes we're looking at things from that check the box. And I think it's very easy to fall into the track of, I'm just supposed to do the next thing.
Right.
Like, this is where I'm supposed to go. This is where I'm supposed to go. This is where I'm supposed to go. Right. So that slow your roll.
And that's not just like in the professional world. I even found it as, a lot of women I think can relate to when you hit 30, you're like, oh my God, I need to get married and have kids right now. My time clock's ticking, and you're worrying about, okay, I need to be at this point in my career, and I need to be married, and I need to have kids, and I need to do this, and I buy the house, and I do, and then you're like, wait a minute, what am I even doing? Like, let's enjoy the moment in the ride versus worrying about what's next. And it's a hard thing to do, but once you can get it, great things will happen because opportunities present themselves versus you looking for what's out there next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a question. How do you juggle very distinct roles, right? Parent, president of an aerospace company, mm-hmm. and all of you shared with us that you're on a lot of boards.
Yes.
And clearly still out doing business development if you were out at at the event with all the people from across the sector. So how do you keep all those balls in the air? What supports do you need?
Right. So like the number one is like build your village, and that's both at professionally and, personally at home, right? To help with family things. But I literally wouldn't be able to do what I do today without the team that I have in place. And I honestly, like, our team at Burke Aerospace is family. I consider, sometimes I'm like fighting with my brothers today because, you have that close knit relationship, but I always thank them because I'm like, hey, you guys allow me to like get out there and then do all the fun stuff while you guys are like grinding it out in the shop, 6 days a week sometimes. And so, it's always being thankful for the team that you have, building the team that you have, and, and trusting, right? And trusting that they can get the job done if you're not, in the manufacturing shop all day, because I got to be honest, first 10 years of my career, I didn't miss like a day of work, right? I was too afraid to take vacation, and I was too afraid because I was like, oh, it's all going to crumble when I walk out the door. Mm-hmm. And in manufacturing, you all know that there's always a machine problem, a people problem, and there's a pile of work that's never going to get done. You never get to the bottom, right? Because the things mm-hmm. continue to stack, and that's all about, juggling multiple things. So I would say, with the kids is like having a strong village to help you, if you can't pick up the kids today and you need, this activity or that activity, having friends and family to help you out, and understanding you can't do everything yourself, usually when you're in a manufacturing role, you're a type A personality and you think you can do everything yourself, but really taking a step back and realizing it's okay to rely on other folks to help.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, I love this build your village language. I'm totally stealing that. Build your village. It's such a friendly way of putting it, right? Yeah. Build your village and trust that your village has your back, which mm-hmm. is a great way of looking at it. And then, sort of what has been some of the inside game, like, that you've done to when you've had those moments of fear of like, okay, I just have to trust my village. I just have to trust the people. Like we have those moments. That's a part of a leadership journey, is those moments when we feel like we're taking a leap of faith. I mean, it is an unavoidable aspect of leadership. Like what is a best practice that you've discovered to overcome those moments of fear?
So I think it was like a little bit of a transition for me, right? I didn't just go and hand the reins and walk away and be like, oh, they got it, right? So in the beginning, when I started to, delegate more or, know that everything wasn't happening, I'm like, well, all right, can you just shoot me a couple texts throughout the day so that I know things are on track, or just a couple of check-ins? And then those got less and less, but it was kind of like a slow transition where it wasn't just like, this is the way we're doing it, and that seemed to help for me. And it was funny because I did take a day off, and it was in the last week, and I was like, no one called me all day. This is so weird. They don't need me anymore. But it would have went from, 10 calls to 5 calls to 3 calls to the 2 to the 1. And then it's like, wow, they can do it, so it's a slow progression, I think, is really the best advice on that, versus thinking it's going to happen overnight,
Yeah.
and you have to do what's like, what's best for you as a manager style. Some folks need a little bit more and some folks need a little bit less.
Right. And you also have to, like, part of what I hear inside your description there is that you're sort of you're making it in piece by piece by piece, like little pieces along the way. And that is, when we do that, like what you did was you did it, you eased off while building trust. And you're also building trust in your own self when you do that too. So there's a mutual, because we have to trust not just them, but we have to trust ourselves, right? Everything you just described is an exercise in self-trust as much as in trusting the team. Absolutely. Right. And I think for the type A person who does that you just described, some of that just involves letting go of some ego too, right? Yes. Like, I can do it all, but does it make sense for me to try and do it all at one time? And am I less of a person if I don't try to do all of it at one time? And when we try to do it all, we actually end up in burnout. We end up in sickness. We end up in wrecked relationships. So I love your advice. And I hope everybody out there who is really saying, I am on it, I'm going to go after it, pays really careful attention to, like, slow down, back down, find the smaller, easier pieces of the path to get there.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I think also it's like, and don't be afraid to ask for help, right? Even if it's your own team or it's, your manager or whatever, whoever your person that you need to go to is, don't be afraid to ask, because most people are going to want to help you before they even do their own tasks. That's what I've found in the past,
What? People want to help? Right. That's an amazing concept.
Right. As long as you're not an asshole.
That's true. That's true. People, the no asshole rule. We have a no asshole rule. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So the other thing that I'm wondering about, based on, your ability to build trust, delegate effectively, and have people doing things so that you can step forward and do other things. What's been made available to you as a leader in your organization because they've got it?
Right. So I would just say that it's folks that are stepping up that, maybe because they didn't have the opportunity before, you didn't realize what capacity they actually had, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of, without even knowing it, you kind of put this like bubble shelter around people, because you're like, okay, I have all these controls over anything, and I only want you working on this, right? And so you're kind of like doing a disservice to your employees, right? If you're not allowing them to branch out and see what else they can get involved in, because most of the time folks like getting involved in other aspects of the business and not just doing their day-to-day, sometimes mundane work tasks, right? And so if you're like, hey, I need to get involved in, EHS today. I have a safety, concern that needs to be resolved, and this may be an engineer. And then they're like, all right, great. Yeah, I'd love to help out. And believe it or not, most engineers, the way they think, they're actually the great advice when it comes to safety things, because they can engineer out something in their brain that this would fix this, whatever the safety concern may be. But, it's like breaking folks out of their shells to see what their true, capabilities and capacity is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's a note to all of us. So I'll throw this out also as a shake-up factor for our friends, is asking for help is not a weakness. I'm just going to say that out loud, even though intellectually we know that, but very often, emotionally we don't have that response. But asking for help can also be looked at as a way to build talent, build other people, and amplify what they bring to the table. Mm-hmm. Like, that's leader's mindset right there, is what, I mean, obviously, of course, because you're a leader, but for anyone that's out there trying to look at what does it mean to develop myself as a leader, that's a hot tip.
Right.
Well, and the other thing I heard in what you said, Brittany, was, and my husband worked in corporate America forever.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was offered a promotion, and we talked about whether he wanted to take it. And he said, I see how hard they work.
Yeah.
He said, they don't have a life.
Right.
They're on call 24/7. They don't take vacation. When they do, they have 3 phones. He
Yep.
said, that's not a life I want. I want to spend time with you and our kids. So he actually chose not to take the promotion.
Right.
And it's an interesting thing that because you're modeling more integration in your life, other people may see more potential. Like, I could do what she's doing because you're saying, I'm not doing it all myself, right? You're
Right,
not
yeah.
like, you don't have your cape in the closet, as far as I know, for your superhero.
Well,
And you've achieved so much through other people, which gives
Yes.
everyone else permission to think that I don't need to do this all myself. I do it through other people.
all right. Yep. And that was, it was a big risk and a big chance that I took, right? Leaving corporate America to a small family owned second generation business, right? A lot of people look at me like, why would you ever do that? Right? You have a whole career here. You could retire from here. And it was a risk, right? But I found myself, I was 30 years old and I was like, I'm never gonna find a husband and I'm never gonna have kids or anything. I live and breathe this place, right? So it was like taking that risk to go to a smaller business, but then the smaller businesses allow a lot more flexibility, right? So you can be the president of a company and you can have a 5 and a 7-year-old and go to sports activities, and you figure out that work-life balance is a lot more flexibility, getting out of, the corporate America world. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of benefits to it as well.
Sure, of
but
course.
I found for me, after you get through the first 9-10 years of your life, okay, let's make a switch. And a switch isn't the worst thing, it opens up for other opportunities.
Yep.
Seems like it worked out for you.
Yeah. Yes. I'm very thankful for my role today.
So I want to close out our conversation. I think we could do this all day because you are just like, you are a fountain of amazing information. But I want to just give a shout out of a couple of major shakeup factors that I invite our listeners to take with them and just bear in mind as they develop their career. One is like, tune into yourself, listen to what you really want, like really pay attention to that. 2, slow your roll if you need to. It is not a race.
Right.
3, it's okay to sometimes go wide and sometimes go deep. We need to do both over the course of our career. And then the 3rd or 4th or whatever, how many numbers I have at this point, I lost track because I've got my notes, but build your tribe and build that trust in them and in yourself. And that'll take you everywhere you need to go in life. So
It takes a village.
It takes a village.
It does.
A village.
It does.
That's right.
Awesome.
Brittany Isherwood, thank you so much for being with us today. We've just absolutely enjoyed this conversation, and we hope you'll come back and visit with us on the Manufacturing Shakeup again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Manufacturing Shakeup. You can listen to us each week on your favorite podcast app. You'll find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And if you use the hashtag MFG Shakeup, we will see them and really appreciate your spreading the word about what you're hearing and learning each week. Hey, Jenny, did I forget anything?
Yes, you did. Here's the most important bit. You may have learned something from that guest. They may have told a story about, here's what I did and here's how it worked. Here at the Manufacturing Shakeup, we are all about action. So take some nugget of what you heard today and put it into practice, even if it's small and experimental. Get busy, get dangerous, go shake stuff up, and bring people along with you. Go take an action, post it on social media. Let's have some fun.
The Manufacturing Shakeup is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.